on 91.7 The Edge, WSUW Whitewater. I'm your host, Matt Ellis, and today we got a good group of guys with us. We got Ethan, Michael, Drew, and we got a new member, and that is Ian. So, Ian, welcome to the show. Are you excited to be on the show, Ian?
Oh yeah, I'm excited to be on the show.
Let's start with your favorite team then, Ian. Let's introduce you to Hawk Talk. What is your favorite team? Maybe a couple of your favorite players, like the city that you root for, or the cities, I should say.
In the city that I was, like specifically teams from the city that I was born?
Yeah. Or no, it can be whatever your favorite teams are.
All right. Well, I'd say I'm definitely a Packers fan, but because of like family ties, I also kind of have a little Cowboys fan in me. So that's an interesting combination of teams, I know. But favorite players? I'm not really sure right now. I used to be a big Des Bryant fan, but that's not really a thing anymore. So.
Yeah, Dez is long past his days, but let's just jump straight into the show then. We're gonna skip a question I had today because I don't think anyone wants to talk about rappers today on a sports show. I mean, would you guys agree or?
Rap is pretty cool.
Last week I opened up with a rap question, but today we're just gonna jump straight into our topics. Now, as far as our topics go, we're gonna be talking about the NFL, baseball for a little bit, some basketball news. And then just, some who are the better players in the sports leagues out there. So those is what we're going to be talking about today. So let's jump straight into our first topic then, and that is going to be Mitch Trubisky. Now, Mitch is, speculated to be a highly coveted free agent this year, I would say. I think a lot of teams will be looking to him as, to be the franchise starter for the next couple of years. So, guys, let's start off with Mitch Trubisky. Do you think he can rebound and, become a franchise quarterback, or do you think he's just kind of stuck in his ways and he's kind of going to be labeled as a bust for the rest of his career? Ethan, let's start off with you. What do you think about Mitch Trubisky?
I think he's going to be all right. Like, he was able to start several seasons for the Bears, and he had some success there. I don't think he's going to be, like, a top quarterback, but he's going to be, like, serviceable. He could be, like, a kind of a guy that could fill in and get some yards. He's going to throw up a lot of risky passes, but I definitely think he's been in Buffalo a year learning with Josh Allen, so I feel like he could be a decent quarterback. I've heard, like, he could potentially go to the Colts or something, but I don't think he's like an all-star, but he's just going to be serviceable enough for just a decent quarterback.
Michael, how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think like Ethan said, I think he can. I think he'll be. I think what Ethan was trying to say, he could be a bridge quarterback for like a rookie. As far as markets go, I mean, Pittsburgh's an option, Washington is an option. Like Ethan said, Indianapolis, because there's rumors now that Carson Wentz might be on the way out. What other? Trying to think of other teams they could go to.
So neither of you two believe in Mitch Trubisky as a starter going forward?
Go ahead.
He'll be an all right starter, not like a great starter.
Okay. Drew, what do you think?
I think he's good enough to be one of the top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL.
All right, what is with this animosity towards Mitch right now?
Well, I mean, he had one very impressive year with a subpar team, which honestly gave him pretty much all of his rep, but I feel like the biggest issue with Mitch Trubisky with his following career is that he was sort of figured out in a way at the quarterback position. So nobody really knows what to expect from Mitch now because we haven't seen a whole lot of him recently, obviously, but I'm sure he doesn't want to be a backup anymore, and there's certainly teams who probably don't have excellent draft picks who won't be able to pick up one of these quarterbacks or won't want to commit to a young quarterback. So, I mean, it could be interesting. I think of teams like Cleveland. I think of teams like Indianapolis, like he said. Indianapolis would be pretty interesting. I think that he could do really well there because he's got a good wide receiver core. He'll be able to hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor. And for the most part, he should stay healthy. Their biggest issue with Carson Wentz is that he continued to have his injury bug and he was inconsistent. So that already takes away one of those problems. And if Mitch Trubisky really improved, like people are saying in Buffalo, then that could turn the Colts into a dangerous team.
And then Ian, what are your thoughts on Mitch?
Well, Mitch Trubisky, I really don't see him being like a guy who people are going to target in free agency as a starter. I think he's going to probably be targeted by teams that are looking for a backup QB. And, because he only threw 8 passes last season, so every team that's going to be trying to sign him does not have a lot of tape on what he currently looks like in the NFL. So I think that he could wind up in like a Seattle or like a LA or somebody, or like even Minnesota, somewhere where he would be able to sit on the bench and come in, because he can come in and play. Because when he only threw 8 passes, but he completed 6 of them. So that's a very small number, but still not bad. No touchdowns, 1 interception last year. So obviously he sat the entire season, so you can't really judge him on that. But I don't see him being a starter next season.
Well, see, I think teams know exactly what they're getting in Mitch, and they're hoping for a little bit more. Yes, it has been a year since he's played, but that doesn't really mean much because it's just a year, and in 2019, teams know what he looked like. He looked very average. He looked, a little bit below average as well. The hope is just that a guy like Mitch really grew in his time in Buffalo. And if we look at what Josh Allen did, before 2020 and before this season, Josh Allen was a very kind of turnover-prone quarterback. He was really only on the field for his rushing, very inaccurate, which is kind of similar to Mitch Trubisky. Now, not as good of a rusher, but Mitch Trubisky, a very raw guy, just needed someone to kind of guide him. I think the biggest problem with Mitch was just the fact that he had a very hard time reading defenses, and his accuracy sometimes was very bad because his mechanics were also bad, and just no one could really solve that with Mitch. Nagy couldn't. Mitchell Trubisky had a lot of personal trainers that he worked with, quarterback coaches. They couldn't really solve it. So does that mean nobody here thinks that Mitch Trubisky could ever blossom into maybe not what people thought he could be, but just maybe a very solid quarterback around that top 15 range?
If you're saying that if he ever has a shot at making a Pro Bowl again, I think when you look at the quarterbacks that have come after him and the talent that has come after him, I think that Mitchell Trubisky already had his past time. Like he peaked in his first 3 years of his career.
See, my thing is the guy is already so young, and if he just goes on a team that's willing to believe in him, and especially a team like the Steelers, which is very solid, or a team like the Colts, what you guys were saying, where the run game is very heavy, I think Mitch Trubisky can be a winning quarterback. I don't think he'll ever really take a team deep in the playoffs.
That's what I'm saying. So, talented teams who are looking for a Super Bowl are not calling Mitchell Trubisky this year.
But, no, that's true. But teams like, the Browns, you were saying, that really could use some help. Washington, Steelers, Denver, I think Mitch would be an upgrade over the guys that they have in Bridgewater. I think Mitch should be more highly looked at as a quarterback. And I don't think people are really taking him serious as more of the bridge quarterback that he can be, where he comes in for 2 to 3 seasons, wins a lot, fills that gap for a rookie quarterback, and I think that's exactly what he can be. I don't think that he'll be a negative on the next team he goes on.
Yeah, I agree. He's not a outrageously bad quarterback. We know that he has talent to play at the NFL level, but it just turns into what kind of situation are you going to put him into? Because he's a very situational quarterback. And that's what it really comes down to. Like you said with Cleveland, he's from Ohio, so maybe he has a little homecoming there and tries to duke it out with Baker Mayfield. And another possibility, I think, would be Carolina, because, he played at UNC, right?
Yeah,
so,
I think that'd be a
couple of different homecoming situations in both teams that need quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think that's well. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Michael, you got any more? Ian, how about you?
No, not for me.
So then, let's talk about another quarterback then really quick, something we didn't really plan for, but I just want to talk about Carson Wentz then, because we were mentioning Indianapolis. Do you guys think that Colts should just find any way they can to move off Carson Wentz, or do you think they got to give him one more year? Ethan, what do you think?
I'm not sure. He's just really injury prone, and you said he's got so many young receivers, really good receiver core. I just don't see Carson Wentz staying in Indianapolis. He just kind of was just there. So I think if he wants, he should get a new contract with a different team. It just kind of feels like so like a bridge quarterback. Like, okay, we had Andrew Luck, and then like, oh, he retired, so it's like, let's just get Carson Wentz. So I don't see him on the Colts. You just got to move somewhere else.
Michael, what about you?
I mean, the question is that where would he go if, let's say, the Colts cut him? Where would, I mean?
Well, should the Colts cut him?
Yes. Should the Colts cut him? Where would he go? I mean, Pittsburgh is an option. Washington. I don't know about Carolina, but there's a lot of QB. Denver maybe, but the question really is where will he go, and will teams take him because of his injury history? That's just it too. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, well, I was thinking, what about the Buccaneers? Like, what about if Brady stays retired? Like, who's going to be their quarterback?
Well, Kyle Trask is in the running. I don't know who else is after that though. It's Kyle. Actually, I think Blaine Gabbert's still there. Blaine Gabbert's still there, but I can't see.
We can say that Tom Brady's retired with like air quotes right now, because I mean he hasn't been like dismissed from the team or anything. He's told him he's not going to play for them right now, but it's just we don't know what's to come with him, because he the way that he talks about his retirement, it was like in a podcast today. He's like, I've spent 5 weeks with my kids. I've been golfing, and like it's all like past tense. Like it seems like there is a possibility that he could be turning to something new, which we don't know what that is yet, but we can't rule Tom Brady out as a Buccaneers quarterback.
I mean, there are rumors too that there's been secret meetings with Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, but I don't know if that's valid, but
very interesting.
That is an option for him. Go where it all started, because he's a Joe Montana fan. So
when we go back to
continue.
Sorry.
You can go ahead, Drew.
All right. Well, yeah. So in terms of Carson Wentz, I don't think they can give up on him yet necessarily. He had a relatively okay year last year. He had probably 2 or 3 games that I feel like a lot of people pay a lot of attention to, because they just weren't up to par. One being that last game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, which they needed to win to get into the playoffs, in which he played very subpar. So, but other than that, they won games against New England, they won games against Arizona, they won games against San Francisco while he was a quarterback. And they had a lot of narrow losses in that span. They have the defense to do it. Their offense is only going to get better. And as long as Carson Wentz stays healthy, that's the only thing that could really ruin another chance with them, is if he were to get banged up. Which maybe that's a good spot for Mitch Trubisky, because that's a reliant backup that you can have for an injury-prone quarterback.
Yeah, I think that the Colts situation is especially interesting because there's already talks about them moving off of Wentz, but it's like you traded a first-round pick for him, or what would eventually become a first-round pick. So it's like, why would you trade for a guy when you knew that he was going to be a project? And how could you be frustrated with his work when you knew exactly what you were getting? I always find that when GMs do that, it just kind of shows you they either don't know exactly what they were doing and they were just hoping for a miracle, or they're just a little too impatient with the guys that they're bringing in.
Yeah, I did just pull up his stats. He didn't have a terrible year last year. Over 3,500 yards, 27 touchdowns, 7 picks, and a 94.6 QBR. So that's not terrible, but the injury history is the biggest question.
Yeah, and when I'm looking at the results when he was starting, like all their losses, they lost by 3 to Las Vegas, who was in their stride at that time. They lost by 1 touchdown to Tom Brady. They lost in overtime to both the Tennessee Titans and the Baltimore Ravens. They lost by a touchdown to Tennessee earlier in the year. They lost by a field goal to the Super Bowl champion Rams. And then they lost earlier on to the Seahawks, but none of those were really horrible games. So this is a team where maybe you get that 1 extra touchdown, you get that 1 extra stop on defense, and they are 11-6 or 12-5.
Yeah. So, I mean, the jury on Mitch Trubisky and Carson Wentz is still out there. I think Wentz should probably just get another shot, but if I was Indianapolis and I found a way to move off of him, I personally would. I'm just not the biggest Wentz guy. And I think he's a little too wild for my liking. I think he reminds me a lot of Jay Cutler.
He's someone who could become one of those perennial backups, I think, Carson Wentz.
Yeah, Wentz certainly could. Now let's move on to our next topic, and that is going to be the MLB salary cap situation. Now, we still want to talk baseball and Hawk Talk, but there's not a lot going on, so let's just kind of talk about the salary cap and if they should change anything as far as the salary cap goes. Now, the salary cap in MLB, it's a little bit weird, pretty much because there is none at all, and there's not a whole lot of rules surrounding the salary cap in baseball. Essentially, you can just kind of spend how much you want per year, and that leads to teams like the Dodgers, Yankees, Mets really taking over the payroll and having an unfair advantage. So what do you guys think? Does the MLB need a salary cap, and what should they do to fix their situation? Drew, let's start with you. What do you think about the MLB?
Well, I think that, I mean, when you look at the teams, and if you really want to have a successful team, the market within baseball is very huge, because there's usually a 162 game season, and you got to be able to consistently bring people out. And in cities like New York and San Diego and LA, that's going to happen all the time. So if you can generate that revenue, then you have, I think in the MLB, you have more than all the right to bring the stars to the forefront. The thing is that you should be able to access that for every team. But I mean, when you look at Milwaukee, I think their salary right now is about $97 million, as compared to the number one team, New York Mets, $236 million. And I think that partially a problem with the willingness to spend money if you're the Milwaukee Brewers. It's almost like it kind of reminds me of like soccer, like overseas. They kind of just buy everybody. The teams that have the most money will pick up the best players most of the time. If you're a good star on like a smaller team, you're going to get bought by a bigger team eventually. But it's really interesting to me in the end.
Ian, what do you think about the MLB salary cap situation?
I do think that they should implement like a more hard salary cap. Like baseball is not exactly my like area of expertise, but it does sound like there's a big problem with larger market teams just kind of having an unfair advantage over smaller market teams.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, it's mainly like, the team that it's in a big city has a big market, we'll just buy whatever. Like, we'll get Mookie Betts the Dodgers get Mookie Betts for $300 million, and let's play Kershaw a huge contract too. Let's get everyone. It's like it's MLB The Show franchise mode. Just pick random players from different teams, and hey, you want to come to the Dodgers? And it's like, and like these small market teams, they hardly get a slice of the cake. Like, yeah, you got Yelich on the Brewers for over $100 million a year, but it's like that's like the biggest signing since like Braun in 2012. So it just kind of unfairly for these small market teams to actually do something good, because like lots of teams like Pittsburgh have been bad for many years. So it's like, how are you supposed to help? Like, how are you supposed to like help them get better? Like, they can't afford anybody because it's not that big of a market. It's like you got to build their way up through like draft picks and like prospects. So it's like a lot of difference for like the smaller teams.
The GM in me likes to see that happen in MLB, to like draft and keep young guys and make them fall in love with your team, because in the end that's what's the most valuable. I mean, when you look at the payrolls, none of the top 10 teams won the championship last year. It was number 12 Atlanta Braves, but look at the teams at the top. New York Mets underperformed drastically. The Yankees are perennial underperformers throughout this decade since Derek Jeter left. Padres spent a lot of money, didn't get anything out of it. I mean, there's just all these teams that have access to this money, but it doesn't guarantee anything. So for me, I don't know if it matters as much money-wise. Like, some players are going to be like, hey, I believe I deserve more. But that doesn't really mean anything, because there's so many pieces to baseball, I think.
So would you say that there's no correlation between salary cap and winning?
Yes, there's no guarantee between salary cap and success.
And that's what I think is pretty true, because as you were saying, the Mets are very high. Now, they did spend a ton of money in free agency this year, so we'll see how they do that. But, a lot of new guys that they added, but I still would think they finished third in their division, and they're number one in payroll. The Yankees, they just pay a lot of guys big money. But you know what I think it kind of is? When you have all this money that you can spend, and this rule doesn't apply to the Dodgers, but I think teams like the Yankees just spend money to spend money. You know, like,
Yeah.
did they need to go and get Joey Gallo, who admittedly is very good in terms of advanced analytics, and could maybe be a rising superstar, very good in the outfield, but I just don't know if they needed to get a guy like Gallo.
He's the new age of Adam Dunn. He's the 40 bombs and 100 strikeouts in a season type
Yeah,
of guy.
that's the three outcome batter. Walk, strikeout, or a home run.
Well, and like sometimes the advanced analytics with those guys are just so promising, but then you watch them strike out, 3-4 times in a game, and it's like, okay, what kind of player is this? And that's what the Yankees have done, where they've been not that smart with their payroll, which is interesting because although I think there should be a salary cap, it doesn't seem like, honestly, that the top teams are always the teams that are like sure to win it all. What do you guys, Michael, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I've been waiting for a quick time to bring this up. I think that just money in sports is so trivial. I don't know if anybody saw J.R. Smith on the I Am Athlete podcast the other day, but he was talking about like just NBA players. They'd rather spend $60,000 in the club than feed 2,500 people in the hood. I think that's the same way with owners. They'd rather go and purge on this name that's going to build their brand as opposed to bring in someone who could be useful in a championship run. They're going to go for big names. I feel like that's like Javi Baez right there. He's a big name. He's a subpar batter. You saw it with the New York Mets after he got traded. And I think that just money's trivial. And I think it comes down to how you develop your talent.
Yeah, Ian, do you have any thoughts on this?
Oh, no, not really. I agree.
Michael, do you have any more thoughts? I mean, surely someone around here has got to have some sort of hot take or a way to solve the salary cap situation, because I'll propose a couple of things.
Well, I mean, nobody can agree on it at the top either, so.
Well, so let's talk about it now. What should the salary cap be set up? And I'll start with 150. Should it be lower or higher than 150? And the top teams, just to give you a reference, is $236 million. That's the New York Mets. So how about $150 million?
Yeah, I think that's good because it'll cut it down a bit so it's equal, a little bit more fair. So the Mets could sign like 6 players of their liking instead of 8.
Does anyone, Michael, what do you think about that?
That sounds like a fair amount, for sure. With, like you said, well, with the payroll and everything. So like Ethan said, you can sign 6 players instead of 8, and you're not going to get these franchises that spend a ton of money, and it'll limit them of how much money they can spend.
Well, so the way that I look at it is it's a 26-man payroll, and everyone additionally on the 40-man I think gets a certain amount, and then minor leaguers get a certain amount as well. If I'm looking at this, I would almost go, let's see, probably a little bit higher than 150. If we want to have like the 26 like MLB guys slated at making like, you can pay an average of like $6 million a year, I'd go somewhere between 160 and 170. Like a 165 almost, I'd say.
Yeah, and I do think that's pretty fair. But one thing that I don't think is talked about enough is the fact that I don't think the players want a salary cap.
Well, I think when you look at the NBA, like the inflation that's taken place over the last few years, I think is what's going to come next to baseball once they come up with a collective bargaining agreement. Because baseball players are going to want to get paid more if they can have access to it. That's how the world works. So I feel like it's really hard to come up with a salary cap that can just remain there. So I almost think that you could almost like, you could say maybe, well, it's a difficult situation because some market teams aren't even going to be able to fill out the $160 million because they just don't have that money allocated to put towards players.
Well, and see, that's the problem as well. I think the MLB also needs a minimum spending rule, because I don't think the Cleveland Guardians should be able to spend $30 million a year and essentially say, although we think we have a good team, we're not going to really pay any of our guys that much money. Things like that I also think are not good for the sport. It just kind of proves that you're willing to sit in the bottom and pay $30 million a year for your team and still make a good amount of money from all your fans. So I think that needs to be addressed as well. I think $30 million is way too low for a team to be spending.
I think that they're just kind of doing that to themselves. Like, if you, like, people who are going to want to get paid now know that they're not going to go to Cleveland because Cleveland's not going to pay them. And is that going to give them, is that going to help their situation? Probably not.
Well, see, and that's where baseball needs to step in and say, you know, we want a more competitive league where teams are going to compete. And with the fact that, you know, it's kind of obvious that the teams like Orioles and Pirates and even the Reds for so many years who just keep trading away their stars, it seems like sometimes they don't want to compete or they become too okay with not competing. And you're in this cycle of, okay, well, this is another rebuilding year. We're going to spend a lot of money next year. And then it just keeps happening and happening and happening. And all of a sudden, you don't have a championship for 60 years. And then you're still in Cleveland, so things are even worse because you live in Ohio. So
You know what team that really comes to mind when you just said that is the Miami Marlins. Look at what they have done. They have had so many quote-unquote rebuilds. And Derek Jeter, I don't know if you guys heard, but he just stepped down. Yeah. And even just a little side note, even when he took over the team, I'm like, what is he doing? And he did that team's already. But like I was saying, is you look at a team like the Marlins, where quote unquote rebuild, they blow up their roster almost every single year. They can't fill their stadium. It's awful.
Yeah, also kind of like the Rockies. Like they had Arenado and Story, and they just don't get like the free agents or like spend any money to help them out. And it's like when the team needs to rebuild, they aren't like selling off all their guys to get prospects. Like they got like finessed out of Nolan Arenado and $50 million. So it's like you gave up like the top player in the game and $50 million to get some decent prospects.
You look at, the Tampa Bay Rays, they used to be the joke of the league for so long, and now they're competing, not winning championships, but they're able to compete.
I mean, yeah, and who knows if the Rays were maybe a little bit more willing to spend in free agency, maybe it could have led to some things, but Tampa is kind of a harder place to.
Well, they can't fill their stadium either.
Yeah,
I mean, stadium.
They do. The Trop's horrible.
Yeah, and they don't even play in Tampa either, which I don't think is that big of a problem. But some people say they need to go and move to Tampa. Right now, they play in St. Petersburg.
Well, they
Florida.
did.
St. Petersburg Rays.
They were trying to work for a sister city plan where they play half their games in Tampa and Tampa Bay, and then half their games in Montreal. But MLB said no, you can't do that.
Yeah, let's talk about that really quick. What were they thinking? How do you expect to get free agents if half the season you're in Montreal?
For a long time, it was actually speculated that the Rays would actually pick up their bags and move to Montreal because of where they're located in the city, and they can't fill their stadium, like I said. And they tried. I don't know how long ago they even proposed it, but they were going to play half their games in Tampa, and then when the weather got unbearable down there, they'd go play in Montreal. But the issue with that is that neither of them had a good stadium. Montreal needed to build one because the Olympic Park is used for something else now.
Well, sorry to cut you off, but and it's in Canada. Right. Like, how do you expect players? Like, what if you had a family? Are you going to move your family to Florida, Tampa?
Buy 2 mansions.
The other problem is the Toronto Blue Jays. That's the other issue. Because I don't know if they'd want a rivalry, if they'd want another team in. Oh, no, Toronto's not Ontario. Never mind. Forget I said that.
Yeah. So with that, we're going to move on to some other topics. Okay. And we're going to be talking about some of the better players in each league, the best of the best, if you will. Who is the best player in each league now? We're all going to go around the room. We're going to say from any league, any player, who we think the best player in that league is. And we're going to debate it. We're going to say, is that true? Right. As a group, what do you guys think? So, Ian, we'll start off with you. Who is your best player in whatever league you want?
The best player in the NFL I'll do is just as maybe not as an impact player, like value-wise, you would pick like a quarterback or something, but just as a pure football player, Aaron Donald. I don't think there's anyone that really comes close to how incredibly good at the defensive tackle position he is, because he's small for that size. He's 6'2", 285, something like that. But like the guy at his combine ran a 4.68, and so he's freaky quick. And you see his play strength is just incredible too, because an O-lineman either just doesn't get his hands on him ever because he's too quick, or he just still has the play strength to just completely run through guys. And, you know, those kind of players don't grow on trees. And it's a skill set is so incredibly unique and such a, you know, hard to find body type to be able to actually play at the NFL level that I think the value of Aaron Donald on the defensive line just can't be understated.
Yeah, I definitely think Aaron Donald is one of the top guys. What do you guys think, though? Is he one of the better players in the league, if not the best?
Yeah, he's probably one of the best defensive players.
Drew, what do you think as well?
It's a very entertaining question. I mean, he's proven that he's a Hall of Fame talent, but I mean, he's going to be. I think I don't think he's allowed to be the best player in the league anymore because everybody triple teams him. It just takes away from how good of a player he is, and it also just goes to show how dominant he has been. And how scary he is. I think that the second closest comparison is in Myles Garrett. I mean, we all saw the picture of him going in with the no sleeves at what game was that? It's at some game this year. But dude's Hulkamania. But like those are way different than what they're looking like now. Speaking of that, I saw offensive tackle Evan Neal's combine pictures today. He weighed in at 330. But he was built like he was a good 6'8", 270. He's going to be, I think, one of the best tackles to ever grace the gridiron.
Yeah, I wonder if the Jags would consider taking him number 1 overall. Who knows? There's rumors that they might trade that pick, but let's stay on the topic of the better players in the league. Michael, is Aaron Donald the best player in the NFL?
For a defensive player, absolutely, for sure. I know I was just going to bring up when Drew was talking in the Super Bowl, remember, he was quiet like the first half. Like there really wasn't much pressure, but then in the second half, they just couldn't contain him anymore. And I think Aaron Donald is for a long time, I actually thought J.J. Watt was going to be the greatest defensive player, but Aaron Donald, he's been in the league longer than Watt has, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think he's no doubt, in my mind, but probably a future Hall of Famer if he keeps putting up the numbers that he does.
So does anybody think that it's Patrick Mahomes or another quarterback? Because I would say that, yes, I do agree, Ian. I would say that I do think he's the best player in the NFL, but there's for sure an argument for Mahomes, and a lot of that does come in because of positional value and the fact that it's the quarterback position. But does anyone think it's another player, Mahomes, Josh Allen?
I'll argue for a running back, Derrick Henry. I think that he's the most talented player in the NFL. He was going to blow up the rushing record if he would have stayed healthy this year.
Yeah, it was one of the worst stories to hear when Derrick Henry got injured because of the season he was having. I think he would have won MVP. I think he would have been
I was going to say, I think so too.
There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, he's still a top 10 rusher in the league this year. He finished with I think exactly 907 yards, and that was through week 9 or something. So yeah, Derrick Henry is definitely a very good player. Would have probably been the first non-quarterback MVP since 2012, Adrian Peterson with the Vikings, and that would have been saying a lot.
And he's not the only guy who I think can do that. I mean, we saw what Jonathan Taylor did. He had a very subpar start to the season, but he hit his stride, and there was no turning back from there. So Jonathan Taylor isn't quite like the bigger, hulkier running back per se, but that dude was a track guy. He can run faster. He can outrun most cornerbacks. So he's someone who could also eventually enter that conversation as the best player in the NFL.
Yeah, Taylor's definitely one of the more special backs in the NFL. Ethan, let's go to you now. Who is your best player in any league?
MLB, I'd probably say Juan Soto. It's close between him and Mike Trout. The thing is, Mike Trout doesn't really have that much playoff success. He's been in the playoff once. So it's Juan Soto, he could lead his team to the playoffs. He's got a ring already, 40 home runs, 120 RBIs, 300 average every year. One of the sweetest left-hand swings in baseball. Like, the Nats might be really good next year because of Juan Soto. Like, who knows? Maybe he'll just go off and like carry all these like young rookies to the playoffs. But yeah, it's Juan Soto because like ever since he came up at 19 years old, he's just been hitting home runs left and right, and he's a power hitter, but he's got a high batting average too. So it's like when you could hit so many home runs and have like a high batting average, like it's just crazy what he's able to do, and he's like as old as me basically.
Yeah, Juan Soto's insane, and that's actually a really good player that you bring up because for me in baseball, it's between 4 players, and that's Soto, Jacob deGrom, Trout, and then Shohei Ohtani. Because I think his versatility is just what makes him so special. But what do you guys think about Juan Soto being the best player in Major League Baseball? Michael, what do you think?
I'd have to say for sure. But I think we know we've never seen a player like Shohei Ohtani. There hasn't been anybody like him since.
Babe Ruth? No, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so we're just going to bring that up. But
does he count? Probably not, but no, I know what you mean. I mean, Babe Ruth was throwing like rocks pretty much as baseballs.
Well, yeah, I guess you can say that.
But yeah, what do you think about Juan Soto?
Herman.
What?
Good old George Herman. Babe Ruth.
I didn't even know that was his actual name.
I'm pretty sure that's his name.
I'll be honest, I did not know.
I'll have to Google him. Like what Ethan said, like you said, that he is incredible for what he can do. I think I'm trying to remember at the World Series. I think he hit a home. There was some crazy stat that I saw about him roll across the fax crawler when I was watching, but what he can do is pretty incredible. And like Ethan said, I'll be 24 in August, so he's just as old as I am. So
yeah,
I'd put Juan Soto at 5.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a young guys league right now, but I'd say I'd put Jacob deGrom before him. I would put Ronald Acuna before him. I'd put Mike Trout before him, and my number 1 just had him up. Now I can't think of who it is.
Tatis?
Freddie Freeman.
Oh yeah.
Freddie Freeman, at the age that he is at, he is still a perennial 35 home run, 110 RBI guy who can steal bases if need be. He's a fantastic defensive player. I would call him the best player in the MLB. He's a champion too. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's got the resume for it.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument. He's probably one of the best first basemen in the game, and I think Jacob deGrom, yes, he's like one of the best starting pitchers in the league. However, it's like these are guys that come out once every 5 games. So it's usually I rate like hitters more over pitchers because hitters are there every day. But deGrom is definitely top 10.
I didn't even mention Shohei Ohtani. I think that he sneaks in there too.
Yeah.
I'd put Shohei Ohtani at 2.
I'd put him at like 5 or 6 because if we have like a couple more years, maybe he could be number 1.
Drew, I found it interesting that you had Ronald Acuna above Juan Soto because I do think that's an argument that's going on in baseball a lot nowadays is what's better. I would prefer Juan Soto, but Ronald Acuna's defense is also pretty good. Both of their defenses, their defensive ability has kind of gotten criticized over the years, but personally, I'm more of a Soto fan, but I definitely see what you're saying with Ronald Acuna.
I think you can make the argument that Ronald Acuna would have had a shot at winning the MVP this year before he got hurt.
Yeah.
He's a talented guy, and we haven't seen a full season of MLB Ronald Acuna. So, and he's going to be heading back into a team that features him, Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies.
Will it feature Freddie Freeman, though?
Maybe. We don't know yet, but...
Yeah, there's a lot of talk saying that
Austin Riley is going to be there, though, too. Heath blew up last year. The Braves are an interesting team, and they're a very talented team.
Yeah, the Braves are another team that can probably make a run in the playoffs. I don't know quite about World Series, but then again, no one gave them a shot this year to win the World Series, and they went out and did it anyway, so...
What about Orlando Arcia? He's still there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm joking.
I mean, yes. I want to give a shout out to 2 guys we haven't even talked about yet, and I think they were the two of the top 3 or MVP runners, and that was Fernando Tatis, Vladimir Guerrero. Even Bryce Harper didn't even make it into my top 5.
Yeah, I think Tatis is definitely probably the best shortstop, but there's other guys that I would value over Tatis.
I agree, and that's why I didn't put him there.
Yeah.
And Tatis needs to be like a little bit better defender. If he gets the defense really good, then he'll be like top like 3 maybe.
See, his defense is like can be either really good, or he's just like throwing a lot of like bad balls, or he's just missing. Kind of reminds me of honestly Derek Jeter,
Oh yeah.
which Derek Jeter is probably the most controversial defensive player of all time. People say he's either one of the best defenders of all time or he's the worst. Like, I've seen no in between with Derek Jeter fans.
Yeah, because he makes like a few good plays, sort of like the over the shoulder like really like jump throws that he was really popular for doing, and like that one cutoff throw he did like back in like the early 2000s. So he's got like a lot of like really like popular defensive plays, but it's like looking at the bigger picture, he's just kind of all right.
Yeah. Now let's go back to our other topic, just on the better players in the league. Drew, who is your guy as the best player in the league?
Let me switch it up a little bit. Let's go over to basketball, and the best basketball player right now, Ja Morant.
No way.
That's a spicy take.
No, I'm kidding. I'll go Luka Doncic.
What?
That's still
It's even spicier.
Yeah. What's your reasoning?
My reasoning is I think he can guard anybody on the court, and I think he can score on anybody on the court.
I mean, yes, but I don't think he's had the impact that one of the better players in the league should have. And I understand the Mavericks are by far a perfect team, especially when they had Kristaps Porzingis. Things just weren't working over there in Dallas. So I do think Doncic is one of the best players in the league. I just can't say that he's better than a guy like
I don't want
KD.
to take Giannis.
Why not Giannis?
Because someone else is going to take him.
I was going to say mine is definitely Giannis. So let's talk about those two guys
the
now.
Greek.
So, Drew, between Giannis and Luka, I mean, who do you give it the edge then?
I'm giving it to Giannis.
Yeah, it's definitely Giannis.
I want to argue why Doncic should be in that conversation.
All right, why should he be in that conversation?
Because he doesn't even really have the help in Dallas. He's got Kristaps Porzingis, and that's really it.
Well, he's over in Washington now, too. I think really the help that he has in Dallas, Maxi Kleber is kind of a solid player. Dinwiddie is there now, and then they got some other role players. But I don't like the way that Dallas is made up.
I guess take Luka Doncic off that Dallas team. What's their record right now?
I mean, yeah, but take Steph Curry off the
47.
Warriors, you know?
Take Giannis off the Bucks. There's 2 other All-Stars on that team.
I mean, yeah, but a team like the Nets, for example, without a Kevin Durant, I mean, they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league.
I agree. So maybe Kevin Durant should be in this conversation too. I'd be willing to say that, especially since he's coming back now. We're going to see for sure.
I've just never liked that argument because people say it a lot with Rodgers too. Take him off his team. Look what's going to happen. Like I just don't know if that's like one of the better ways to grade like a player.
No, and we haven't even seen the best Luka Doncic yet.
I mean, yeah.
Giannis is in his prime now. Luka is not.
I mean, yeah, but Giannis is still better.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So
I'm sorry. I don't want to be
like you're
because everybody's gonna say Giannis.
You're saying he will eventually blossom.
He will take over when Giannis is done.
Okay, and
because it's not LeBron's league anymore.
It's also Luka Doncic's birthday a few days ago. Yay! Happy birthday!
So, is there an argument then for LeBron James anymore as one of the best players in basketball?
LeGoat.
No, he's not.
I know. I'm joking.
You don't think? You know what? I think for the rest of the show, we should just debate if LeBron's the GOAT or not. Because honestly, I've completely switched up my idea. I think it's LeBron now. I used to be an MJ guy. I'm a Bulls fan. It pains me to say that. I think I'm a LeBron guy all of a sudden. What do you guys think? Is LeBron the GOAT or not?
And if they need to play a 1-1 game to 21 to see who's the GOAT.
I mean, let's talk about it right now, Drew. I think you probably gotta have a good opinion on this. Between it's Jordan the GOAT, and I still think it could be Jordan as well. My take is it just keeps flip flopping day to day.
Well, it's like similar to the Brady Rodgers conversation because, I mean, everybody who's talking about Jordan goes 6 for 6 in the playoffs or in the NBA Finals. I mean, and just the attitude that he had was just next tier in that time. I think that I would still give it to Michael Jordan, but since I said that even when like LeBron James won the Disney NBA Finals, it was
The Mickey Mouse ring.
I think that was one step. He's now one step below Michael Jordan. I think it takes him making another championship run to really push it over the top.
See, for me, go. You can finish your point.
I mean, he's an excellent player, but I mean, it's just the inconsistency in the playoffs that has really like done the number.
But what inconsistencies? To me, he had one. To me, in his entire career, he's had one bad series, and that was against the Mavericks in the finals. Everything that I think he's been almost perfect, almost perfect. Now he's had some rough goes with the Celtics and with the Spurs. I don't think he was ready yet
with
as
the
a
Mavericks?
player. No, that's what I said. The Mavericks. He had one of the.
I did play this pretty.
And if you know what,
Yeah.
Space Jam, the original one from the 90s, is one of my favorite movies. Like, I watched it so many times, so it's like I got that connection with MJ, so he's the greatest.
Yeah.
That's a good reason, right?
Yeah, I think that in the future, I think LeBron will definitely, move up towards being on like a similar level of Jordan as just being a basketball legend. But the thing about I would say Michael Jordan right now is the GOAT, just simply because LeBron James' career has not, it's not over yet. So, there's not been that time to like think about how far beyond basketball Michael Jordan's fame still goes. Because like if his sneakers help make Nike into a $30 billion company. And then just like, the name Michael Jordan at this point is just synonymous with basketball excellence. And LeBron he's a fantastic player and one of the absolute best of all time. Definitely the best of the 2000s, one of the best of the 2000s, competing with Kobe for that. And then absolutely, also one of the best of the 2010s.
I feel like I have a more interesting question. So we can all agree that LeBron and Michael Jordan are the top two all time. Who's number three?
Kobe.
Kobe.
Yeah.
I personally, I definitely don't think it's Kobe.
People will argue Wilt and people will argue Kareem, but I think that Kobe is the three.
Alex Caruso.
I think that it's got to
Very
be
close.
Kareem. Because my thing with Kobe is, on his first couple of championship teams, the first 3 years, Shaq was always the better player. And if you're going to say he's the third best player of all time, then I was looking a little bit more from Kobe in those first 3 series than what I got. I don't think it was until Kobe was later in his years with the Lakers when he beat the Celtics and the Magic. I think that's when Kobe really became Kobe. But to me, he was not the best player in those championship teams with the Lakers. And that's why I don't think that he can even be higher than a guy like Magic Johnson.
Here's the thing. That was when Kobe was 22, 24, and 25. And he only got better after that.
I mean, yeah, he only got better, but the Lakers were a very average team for many years. And I understand as well that Kobe was pretty much just Kobe out there. But even, a guy like LeBron who's at number 2 or number 1, for a lot of people, like LeBron consistently elevated his team no matter what age he was at. To me, I never really saw Kobe do that to the level as a guy like LeBron. Whereas I would say like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or even Hakeem Olajuwon, I thought that those guys gave more than kind of what Kobe Bryant's impact was.
I'd put Wilt above Kareem.
Why is that?
Because, he was a specimen. I agree that Kareem was a specimen too and was a consistent scorer, but I think that Wilt just had a different level to him and he was just a winner.
Yeah, Wilt was definitely
And a stat monster. He was a man playing with little boys.
I heard one season he averaged like 49 minutes per game. Like, he averaged more minutes per game than like in a regulation like game. It's like he played like literally every second of every game almost, which is crazy.
And as a 7-foot guy, to do that and not have a shortened career due to injuries and stuff, he stayed healthy. He won championships, played for a long time.
Yeah, definitely one of the better players in history. Michael, do you have who your best player in
Sports, yeah. I know I kind of hinted at it before we went on air, but mine has to be, I'm going to pull up Tom Brady's accomplishments in a second. Oh, no, let me pull them up. Here we go. There. So, I'm just going to read a couple of these. So, I think Tom is one of the greatest just because he can elevate his team. He's won more championships than, well, any franchise, more than Jordan now. Well, he's a, let's see, 7-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, 2-time NFL MVP. I know there's obviously rumors that he may not be done, but if you take Tom Brady off the Patriots and the Bucks, what would they be?
One of the best teams in the league. I mean, we can't ignore those defenses, right? I do agree he's the best player, but what's the argument that's going to really get it there for Tom? Because I think it's got to be the fact that he's consistently elevated his teammates. He's been one of the best leaders in NFL history, one of the best passers, just a pure passer's IQ. So for you, what is it then that is making Tom the best player in the NFL, or in NFL history in this case?
Well, I kind of put me on the spot. Thanks.
I mean, we're all on the spot here, I guess. You're crumbling under the pressure.
That's a great question. I can't even.
I think that the only person who isn't like making him the definite greatest player of all time is Eli Manning.
Oh God.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly, it is
that.
true though. If
Like,
he would have won like what?
Take away. I mean, the David Tyree catch happened. You can't take it away.
Thank you.
But that's like under situations like that. That's a Tom Brady. That's one more Tom Brady ring. If you take away the Mario Manningham pass and the Super Bowl after, that's another Tom Brady ring.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
I mean, you can say it all different kinds of ways because, I mean, Malcolm Butler saved the one Super Bowl. Tuck Rule saved the one Super Bowl.
28-3, the Atlanta. That was a...
Atlanta choked up their own Super Bowl.
Yep, they did.
Yeah, and it's just, it's very interesting.
It's like
Philly Special took away one of his Super Bowls.
Yeah, it's like what crazy how like Tom Brady's so good that like people who aren't rooting for the team he's on like want him to lose because like they see the Super Bowl, oh Tom Brady's in it again. It's like kind of like people are so sick of you winning that they want you to not win. It's like how crazy good Tom Brady was.
I think it's also like a reason why a lot of undue like hate goes towards Tom Brady is because of how good he is, how easy he makes playing the quarterback at the NFL position look. It just makes it almost boring to watch sometimes because you're like, oh, here he is, drops back, that's complete, drops back, another completion, and he almost the smaller things in his game, like he almost never takes sacks, he almost never loses yards when he's on the field, and and he takes advantage of like rules such as like, you know, throwing a ball at one of his running back who's blocking for him's feet in order to get an incomplete pass instead of an intentional grounding call. Oh, and I do agree that Tom Brady is absolutely the best NFL football player of all time.
He's also been fortunate enough to be coached by the best coach of all time as well.
Well,
Syrians?
Well, never mind. I was going to say something. I can't remember what it was.
I mean, he other than the playoffs this year, I think that Bill Belichick is starting to prove that as long as I mean, I guess he's a system coach, but who isn't? Cam Newton really didn't do much for him like they hoped he would, but...
Yeah, so with that, let's just jump into our final thoughts. Then, Ethan, we'll start with you. What are your final thoughts?
Well, I was quite wrong with my prediction yesterday. I said that Tyler Hero was going to score 17 points. He actually scored 30, I'm pretty sure. And, yeah, that was a very good Bucks game last night. Drew Holiday is Mr. Clutch.
Michael, what about you? What's your final thoughts?
Well, I shouldn't say extremely, but I am a little disappointed that the MLB and MLBPA could not reach an agreement, and because of that, the first two series of the year were canceled, and there is a possibility now it is a possibility there won't be 162 games now. So hopefully it gets resolved.
And then Drew, what about you?
Bucks. All kinds of Wisconsin sports teams are having magical runs right now. We saw the Badgers with Chucky Hepburn at the end of that game, and last night we saw it with Drew Holiday. But here's the thing. It's starting to get to that point we're in Wisconsin where it's like we're getting up there, we're getting to that point. I'm just waiting to get disappointed again.
I mean, Bucks won it last year, so there's hope that we could get another dub.
You can only hope, man.
And then Ian, lastly, what about you?
My final thoughts, I'm very excited to see the start of the NFL draft process in the next couple of months, just because I'd really love to see where Kayvon Thibodeau winds up. Just put it out there. That's one of probably my favorite player in this whole draft class.
Yeah, I think that's going to be my final thought as well. I love the NFL draft. It's one of my favorite things to break down and analyze the draft. There's just so much hope, too, for a lot of young players that are looking to start their NFL career, so it's definitely one of the better things in sports, in my opinion, is the NFL draft. But with that, that's going to do it for Hawk Talk today on 91.7 the Edge WSUW. Make sure to tune in our shows next week, Monday through Thursday as well. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day.